Good morning, everyone. It's been a little while since I've done a video. Since I think it's a wise idea to practice what you preach. That's a good saying. It's not in the Bible, but it's a good saying. So some of the videos that I do is what I share with other people. But I think it's important that we practice those things, and as people who believe in them, and as I'm one of those people, I've been out doing some things that relate to those videos really, because these messages aren't just for you; they're for me too. It doesn't make me, I'm no better than you essentially, so I have to do the same things. I make sure I'm doing them, not just saying them. So today's thoughts or things on my mind is about who are we letting feed us? What are we feeding? What are we feeding on? And who's feeding us? So we are born into this world and we're like a blank canvas, and we often say, oh well, I feed myself and I make these decisions, but we're always taken from somebody's hand. From the minute we're born, we're always feeding from somebody's hand. Like a baby on the breast of its mother, it doesn't provide for itself. And even when we earn money, so to speak, when we get older, our food comes from somewhere else often. And even if we grow food, going back to the farm where we plant the seed, we don't actually produce the food, which is an interesting thought. We're fed. And that's a practical way. And just like we wouldn't eat something that we hadn't ever seen before from somebody we didn't trust. We wouldn't try it. If we had never heard of this person before, nobody we knew had heard of them, and they were offering us something on a plate that we'd never seen before, and we weren't really sure about it. It looks quite fancy, but we're not sure it's food. Would we eat it? So, this message today is for people who are suffering with anxiety, maybe a worry about. Could be about anything. Could be about the virus. Could be about what you see. The question is the thing that you're fearful of, you're likely to have been feeding on. For example, if you're fearful about the coronavirus, it's more than likely you've been looking a lot about it. You've been watching the news, you've been reading on your phone, you've been looking at the newspapers, you've been soaking in all the detail of all the information that you're being given about the coronavirus. And that's not good for you. I'm going to say it. It just isn't. It's going to make you worry. It's going to make you fear. And not all the information that we're receiving is necessarily good for us, nor is it even accurate. It changes daily. I was laughing at two articles I was reading yesterday. One from the beginning where it said that it's best to stay inside, and another from Nearer Now that says, oh, it's good to go outside because actually in a ventilated place, you're less likely to suffer with it. It doesn't really matter. The point of that is that there's always going to be something ready to feed your fear, but the question is, where is that information coming from? Is it coming from a place of somebody who you know, who you trust, who you know is looking out for your good? These mediums, whether it's the media, whether it's social media, all the root of this information. This goes for both sides as well. So it's interesting. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I think I agree. There's a lot of information out there which isn't all necessarily accurate. The people who present our media aren't always looking out for our best interests. We know that because it's the way we're controlled, so to speak. We're feeding our minds with it, and somebody's paying for that to be fed into our minds. So somebody wants us to feel that way. But this message isn't about all those kind of things, conspiracy theories, or about whatever is where we're being presented with on the television. The message today is, what are you feeding yourself on? And if what I'm offering or what I'm saying is a good place to feed on, is to feed on the word of God, which is what the things he says. It doesn't produce fear, but it produces peace. It produces life, and in yourself you're not worried about things as much, or not the same thing, shall I say. Here's a little few examples, I suppose, of things. I've dealt with a lot of people with marriage breakdowns where pornography's been the issue. When men or women feed themselves on it, they begin, like our bodies when we feed ourselves on chocolate, we want more of it, want more of it, we want more of it. The same happens with what we feed ourselves on in vision. If a man or woman who watches pornography often, they have marriage breakdowns because their expectancy has become high for their own marriages in reality, but we don't realise that the pornography is a fantasy, not a reality. And it's a lust. So if you feed those things, they destroy your soul. If you feed on even worry or fearful things like information about things, and it allows our minds to wander off to certain places. Am I going to die? All these things. Same way as if if you read up enough about different types of cancer and how they might kill you, then you'll have an irrational fear of cancer. You're going to fear that you're going to get it. It's more likely, I mean, 1 in 5 they say, don't they, are going to get it. So it's the case. It's a reality, but it's not something we should focus our minds on. And God made this thing of saying, don't be. Jesus made this point of saying, don't be anxious for nothing, but in all supplication make your request known to God. He worry about the day you're in. Make the most of these moments, because you're not gonna regret living in fear. Sorry, you're gonna regret living in fear. You're not gonna regret not living in fear, if that makes sense. So don't refuse to live in fear, but the only way you can refuse to live in fear is to know where safety is or know peace. And I can tell you from experience, there's no way you're going to know peace like the peace of God. It doesn't matter what circumstance comes, what is around, what viruses there are, what there is around. It's a better thing to be reading than the lusts of your youth, so to speak, the activity of your mind, which can wander off, and it eventually does destroy your relationships, it destroys your health, it destroys lots of different things. The same as, like Jesus said, these things destroy your soul eventually. So focus on the things which are good. This is that in the Bible in Philippians. Things which are upright, which means things which are of good report, noble, high up, high esteem. It says focus your things on those things, the things that are of good report. Feed on those. So I'm just watching actually the cat outside a window. So there's this Psalm of David. A psalm, by the way, is like a song, so to speak, a refrain from David. And he says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." And I think any true Christians can resonate with that. I don't want to go anywhere else. I can never see a life without God. I can never imagine it. Like, to me, he's the stable place of everything. I don't have those fears. I don't really worry about what tomorrow brings, but we make the most of today. I've got lots of things that I have to occupy my mind about. I have to think about. There's like I have my business and things that I have to deal with, but they don't plague me with worry. I don't lose sleep over them, because I know overall God's got it. The same as my family. I know God's holding on to it, so it's okay. If I keep my eyes on him and listen to the things he says, feeding on what he says, his truth, the things that he says are good and right, then I know I'll be in the right place. The mercy of the Lord will follow me forever, like it says in the Bible there, all the days of my life. The question is, can you say that? Can you say the same for you? What are you feeding on right today, right now? What are you feeding? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Who are the voices? Who are you allowing to control? Because your outward feeling is just an expression of what you've put in. What you've put in must come out. So what's dwelling on your mind? What's the first thing that comes to your mind forefront at the minute? It's interesting if you think, just take this example, for instance. If nobody had ever said, for instance, about the coronavirus to you, I'm not saying that this is a thing. If nobody had ever mentioned it to you, how would you be feeling today? It's a question. And I think we all have to be honest with ourselves and look at where you're looking at. Look at the things you're feeding on, the things you're listening to. Are they doing you good? Are they good for your mind? We're all vulnerable to things. I mean, I can quite easily be vulnerable to spending an hour on Facebook Marketplace. It's bad. Guilty. But what are we feeding our minds on? What are we watching? Who are we listening to? I urge you to get in touch with a Christian or get in touch with God direct. You don't have to get in touch with a Christian, but I think it's good if you're kind of thinking, oh, what does God say? I don't even know where to begin speaking to God or even what that's all about. then I think get in touch with a Christian, have a conversation. It doesn't have to be a religious occasion. You don't have to. You can find sermons online. That's fine. Or wait for a Sunday or something. But you can also just talk with someone who knows God. And I mean, there is nothing like it. There's nothing like knowing God. Like there just isn't anything like it. I can't compare. There's no real words I can use to describe it. It is like a safe haven. The Bible talks about this thing. It says that there's two attitudes you can have to Jesus, and in the end, one way or the other, it'll happen. You'll either fall on him broken and realize you're humbled, and you realize actually I came into this earth with nothing, and all the knowledge that I thought I had, I've just gained from various sources. But I'm still that same baby in a sense that knew nothing. I've just acquired, and the most precious thing I've acquired is everybody who's put truth into my life, who shared the truth of God, a living God. And how do you know that God's heart towards people? I think 3 things to sum this up and round this off. All the laws that he instates are good for people's health. Don't kill people, don't steal things, don't lie. Doesn't sound like the sort of person that wants to do you wrong, saying those things. Also, the love of God for mankind is that even though men have done wrong, his love gave up his own son to save those people. He was willing to give that. That's the God that I serve. That's the God that I listen to. That's the God that I feed from. That's my shepherd, the person who leads me. And be sure of this, that you have a shepherd, and you're already being shepherded by one source or the other. You're following something. And the question is, where is that something leading you to? Is it leading you to life, or to green pastures, like the psalm says, beside still waters? Are you feeling quieted in your soul? Are you feeling peace? Or are you worrying about things? Are you getting bitter? Or are you getting twisted? And who is leading you? Who's causing these thoughts in you? Who's causing these ways in you? These things? Ask yourself some serious questions today. Find out what you're feeding on. If it's fearful, or if it's breeding fear, turn away from it and turn towards God, because he'll bring peace like you've never known before. Things are always changing. Coronavirus is the story of today, but there will be something tomorrow, and there'll be something the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. Live in the day you're living in. Know peace today. Know God today. It doesn't really matter about your history. There's a parable in the Bible. I think this is quite a cute one, and it's one I'm going to share with someone soon, about a man who went out and he hired workers in the workplace. I might have mentioned this on a video before. And at the start of the day, he hires a whole load of workers, and he says, "Oh, here you go." He said, "Right, will you work for, let's say, £20?" And people say, "Yeah, we'll work for £20 for the day, right, from now till the end of the day." And they say, "Yeah, we'll do it." So in the middle of the day, he goes up to the marketplace and he hires in some more workers, and he says, "Will you work for £20?" And they say, "Yeah, we'll work for £20." So they come in and they join the other workers. And at the end of the day, near the end of the day, he hires some more workers. And then he says, "Will you work to the end of the day for £20?" And they say, "Yes, we will." So he then starts letting the employees leave. At the end of the day, the first to leave are the ones that started at the end of the day. And the people who started at the start of the day are watching them getting paid. And they're saying, "Well, this isn't right. Why are they getting £20 when they've only worked this long?" And the master says, or the employer, he says, "I agreed with you £20 for the day." He said, "And you were happy with that." He said, "Am I unjust for doing good?" He said, "Or are your minds corrupt, that actually you want more, you're greedy because of these people? Don't worry about what I pay." And there's this principle of following God. It doesn't matter whether you've been a Christian for 500 years, or if you've been a Christian for 5 years, or 5 days, or 5 hours. If it's the last breath that you breathe and you turn to God, or whether it's you've been serving him and knowing him for a long time, it doesn't make a difference. The inheritance is the same. He doesn't work how we work here on earth. He doesn't follow the principles that we follow for our own self, because a lot of our principles are based on selfishness. I want more. But he says, no, it's the same, and I'm fair, and I'm just, and I've promised this to you, and this is the promise for all mankind. Anyone who will turn to me, he says, who will accept the fact that my son has paid the price for your wrong, anybody who will turn to me and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to turn away from living the wrong way now, and I'm going to live the right way, which, by the way, is more beneficial for ourselves, they'll have everlasting life with me. That's the offer of God. Peace for your souls. Repent. That means turn around from your wrong things and turn to God and start doing the right thing. That's the end of my video. Over and out. Love you, bye.